Don't let fear dictate your decisions. There is a version of your life that exists beyond this moment. A version where you made the call, where you said yes when everything in you wanted to say, not yet. Where you walked through the door that fear told you was sealed shut. And that version of you is waiting. Right now, you are standing at the edge of something. Maybe you don't know what it is yet. Maybe you've known for a long time and you just haven't moved. Either way, fear has had the loudest voice in the room, and today, that changes. Fear is not your protector. It presents itself that way. It wraps itself in logic, builds a case, shows you every worst-case scenario, lines them up one by one, and you sit there, reviewing the evidence, as if the trial never ends. But here is what fear never tells you. It never shows you what happens when you do it anyway. It never walks you through the version where you survived, where you adapted, where you rose. Fear only has one ending in its story, and you were never meant to live inside its story. Think about the decisions you haven't made, the ones you've been circling, coming back to, talking yourself into and then back out of. What has the circling cost you? Not the decision itself, the circling, because indecision is its own kind of choice. Every time you postpone, every time you wait for conditions to feel perfect, every time you say, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe when I feel more ready, you are choosing the familiar discomfort of staying over the unfamiliar possibility of going, and the familiar feels safe, even when it's suffocating you. I want you to sit with something for a moment. What would you do? If you knew the fear was lying to you, not gone, not absent, just lying, what would you reach for? What would you build? What conversation would you finally have? What would you stop apologizing for wanting? That answer. That is the direction you are supposed to move in. Fear doesn't go away before the decision. This is the part no one tells you early enough. You will not wake up one morning, feel completely at peace, and then take the step. It doesn't work that way. The people who did the thing you admire, the ones who built what you wish you'd built, who left what needed leaving, who started what you're still planning. They were afraid. They were afraid and they moved anyway. Not because they were braver than you, but because they decided that the fear was not qualified to make the final call. You have been giving fear a seat at the table. And not just a seat. You've been handing it the gavel, letting it decide what you pursue, who you become, how long you wait, how small you stay. And fear has been using that authority. Every time you talked yourself out of applying, every time you shrank your idea down to something more palatable, every time you said, I'll do it when, fear called the meeting. Fear ran the agenda, and fear closed the session. But you were the one who gave it the room. So let's talk about what it looks like to take it back. Not in a dramatic way, not some sweeping declaration, just a quiet internal shift. An acknowledgement that says, I see you, fear. I hear you. And I am not asking you to leave. But you do not get to lead. That is the shift. Fear can ride. It just can't drive. There are people in your life right now who are waiting for you to step into something. Not because they're watching, not because they need a show, but because the world around you shifts. When you shift, when you make the call, someone who loves you exhales. When you say yes to yourself, something in the atmosphere around you changes. Your courage is never just about you. It reverberates. The child watching you, the friend who's stuck in the same place, The version of yourself 10 years from now, all of them, are affected by what you decide today. You are not designed for a small life. I need you to hear that. Not inflated, not grandiose, just honest. You are not built for perpetual hesitation. The capacity you carry, the ideas that keep returning, the longings that won't quiet down no matter how many times you dismiss them. Those are not accidents. Those are directions. And fear has been intercepting the signal. It translates your calling into a warning, converts your instinct into a risk assessment, turns your vision into a list of everything that could go wrong. But what if you stopped letting it translate for you? What if you went back to the original signal, the one before fear got to it, the one that said, go. You have survived everything that fear said would break you. Let that land. Every time you said, I don't know if I can handle this, you handled it. Every moment that felt like too much, every season that felt like it was closing in, every version of, I can't get through this. You got through it, and you are here. Which means your track record with hard things is actually pretty good. Fear wants you to forget that. It wants your history to start fresh every time. So you never accumulate the evidence that you are capable. But you are capable. You have always been capable. So what is the decision you've been avoiding? Not the easy one. Not the one where you already know the answer. The one that makes your chest tighten. The one you journal around but never about. The one you bring up and then change the subject on. That one. What does it look like to make it, not perfectly, not all at once, but 1 inch closer than you were yesterday? Sometimes courage is loud. Sometimes it's the leap, the announcement, the starting over in public. But most of the time, courage is quiet. It's the moment no one sees. When you decide not to talk yourself out of it this time. When you close the tab with all the reasons not to. When you stop asking people who are afraid to validate the thing you already know. When you write the first line, make the first call, take the first step back toward the thing fear told you to abandon. That is courage, the unseeable kind. The kind that changes everything. Here is what fear has never been able to do. It has never been able to guarantee you safety. It promises it. It presents itself as a protection system. But the life fear builds for you is not safe. It is just small. And smallness is its own kind of suffering. The suffering of, what if I had, the suffering of, I knew I should have. The suffering of watching someone else do the thing you talked yourself out of. That suffering does not get talked about enough. Because it doesn't come all at once. It accumulates quietly over years. In the space between who you are and who you were supposed to become. You don't have to live in that space. Not anymore. The distance between where you are and where you're going does not have to be patrolled by fear. You get to walk it differently. With intention, with trust, with the knowing that you were made for what's on the other side of this. I want you to think about a moment when you were afraid, and you moved anyway. Maybe it was small. Maybe no one else would call it brave. But you know what it cost you to do it. And you did it. Sit with that version of yourself for a moment. That person who was shaking but still moving, who didn't feel ready but went anyway. That is who you actually are. Not the person fear describes. That one, the one who moved. Fear will tell you that you don't have enough. Not enough experience, not enough connections, not enough money, not enough time, not enough proof that it's going to work. And you will stand there, taking inventory, trying to build the case that you are enough. But here is the truth. No one who ever built something meaningful started with enough. They started with what they had. And they moved. And moving created the next thing, which created the next thing, which eventually looked like enough. But the beginning never looks like enough. It just looks like a beginning. And you are allowed to begin. The version of you that fear wants to protect is not the highest version of you. It's the version that stays intact, untested, unrisked, unmarked by the attempt. But that version is also unrealized, unlived, and there is nothing safe about an unlived life. There is only the illusion of safety, wrapped around a deep and growing grief. You are allowed to want what you want. You are allowed to pursue it. You are allowed to be in process, to not have it figured out, to be learning as you go. You are allowed to fail and keep going. Fear wants you to believe that one wrong move ends the story. But stories don't end that way. They keep going. They accumulate chapters. They hold setbacks and still arrive somewhere. Your story is still being written. And you are the one holding the pen. What would it feel like to stop being managed by fear? Not fearless, and that's not the goal, but unmanaged. Moving despite it, deciding despite it, building despite it. What would it feel like to make the call and feel fear in your body and do it anyway? And then feel, on the other side of that, the particular kind of aliveness that only comes when you stopped letting fear make your choices. That feeling, that is what is waiting for you. Not every decision will turn out the way you hoped. That's honest. Sometimes you will move and it won't work. Sometimes the door you walk through doesn't lead where you thought. But even then, even in those moments, you will not regret having moved. Because movement builds something, even when it doesn't build what you planned. It builds you. It adds something to you. A knowing, a capacity, a recalibration. That wouldn't exist if you had stayed, and the things that don't work out are not proof that fear was right. They are proof that you were living, really living, in the full sense of the word, where outcomes are uncertain, and you show up anyway, where you don't always win, and you don't stop trying, where the path is unclear, and you walk it. That is the life on the other side of fear-led decisions, not a perfect life. A full one. So today, just today, what is the one thing fear has been keeping you from? Not the list, not the complete inventory. One thing. And what would it look like to take one step toward it? Just one. Not the whole journey, not the full plan. One step, and take it. You are not put here to live in the waiting room of your own life. You were not built to stand at the threshold indefinitely. The door is open. It has been open. Fear just kept telling you it was locked. Walk through. The life you're supposed to be living is on the other side of the decision fear told you not to make. And it is waiting for you. It has always been waiting for you. Go.